Today's official UK labour market statistics will be used by Theresa May's government as proof that austerity is working. But even if you disagree, would a Blairite Labour Party led by leadership challenger Owen Smith make today's figures any different? Or is the whole system, as supporters of Jeremy Corbyn contend, rigged with lies and corruption against ordinary people? It was under Labour's Blair and Brown and Smith supporters that the taxpayer subsidy to capitalism was massively increased. That was before their whole project was destroyed by illegal war in the Western economic crisis. So argues the new book, The Corruption of Capitalism, by Professor Guy Standing at the School of Oriental and African Studies in London. And he joins me now. Guy Standing, welcome to the show. Let's begin with consensus economics before Corbyn, as it were. You say in this new book that non-wage benefits, we're talking company pensions, paid holidays, maternity and sickness benefits, they've all cemented structural inequality in this country. How do you mean?
Well, in the 20th century, we had a labourist model where all entitlements were linked to labour. And there was a gradual shift in the period dominated by social democracy of shifting away from money wages to these non-wage forms of remuneration. And these went predominantly to the privileged people in long-term employment. Over time, those became huge sources of inequality. From the 1980s onwards, with the opening up of a world system, you had a system where wages were under huge downward pressure. You have a class fragmentation taking place in industrialized countries, and the emergence of the precariat. Now, the precariat were the group that lost all those forms of non-wage benefits. Basically saying that while wages were going to fall under the pressure of globalization and technological change and so on, they were going to prop up wages with tax credits and subsidies. It allowed for an orgy of consumption where private debt was going up, wages were falling, the institutions of social support were being dismantled. And they didn't give a damn about the growing inequalities.
But they all represent subsidies to corporations,
of course,
then.
Of course. And what happened in the period of the initial period of globalization was not only did you have a dismantling of the social income with all those forms of non-wage payments, but as wages were being pushed down for the precariat in the whole of Europe and the United States and in Japan, you had a system in which subsidies were being built up. Now, the subsidies were to help with competitiveness. So we have a system where more and more the state, the government, is spending vast amounts of public money on tax breaks, indirect tax cuts, tax avoidance schemes. And what my thesis is in this book is that we have entered an era of rentier capitalism, where the return to assets, the return to property has been shot up, whereas the returns to labour have gone down and down and down. And the precariat is not only being exploited through increasingly volatile, insecure wages, but is having to pay rent in various forms to the winners in society.
What you just said undercuts, then, Theresa May saying we've never had higher jobs growth. We've never had more people in labour under these austerity policies that have been forged by this.
Well, there are a number of peculiarities of this employment situation. In the book, I describe the 5 jaws of snakes. Okay? Traditionally, I'm an economist, traditionally, when productivity went up, wages went up. The jaws of the snake have been opening, real wages have been declining or stagnant for the past 30 years. Whereas productivity, when it goes up, the benefits go to the minorities, okay? The second thing is that traditionally, when employment rises, wages rise. This is the first time in history when employment has gone up, on average wages have gone down. And part of the reason is that a lot of these jobs are scarcely worth calling jobs. Is a 0 hours contract a proper full-time job?
Well, what about this word competitiveness that's often thrown about in the House of Commons and, of course, equally used in neoliberal economies in the United States and all across Europe?
That we give subsidies to the rich so that you come here. We give patent tax breaks. That's effectively giving tax breaks to wealthy corporations. Meanwhile, we say there's public debt, because public debt arises from cutting corporation taxes, cutting taxes for patent and so on, allowing intellectual property to make huge monopoly incomes. This creates a debt situation. So what do they have to do? Well, of course, we've got austerity, so we have to cut benefits because we've got to balance the books. So what has been happening over the last 6 years, in the name of austerity, we're seeing cuts of benefits which are hitting the precariat and the underclass below them, and at the same time you're making more and more tax cuts, inheritance tax cuts, for example. The Duke of Westminster has just died. He inherited his billions of wealth from back in the 18th century.
Well, we invite the 25-year-old heir to the Duke of Westminster Grosvenor fortune on the programme. So when we're talking about, say, BHS and these other high street chains that are so well known here in Britain that have gone bust, obviously Woolworths went bust previously, it's not Philip Green's fault individually that it went bust. It's this whole attractiveness of competitiveness.
Well, it's a mixture. I mean, you can't excuse the Philip Greens of this world because it's a system for their disgraceful behaviour. That's clear. But at the same time, we have a system which has been constructed over the last 30 years, it's successive governments, which have entrenched the entitlements of rentiers. At the top of that is the intellectual property system. Copyright now allows someone who has copyright for 95 years or 70 years, and it might be 50 years after their death. So they continue to get a stream of income. Don't know what they're going to do with the money after they've died, but it flows, and it's not from market forces, it's not from a competitive economy. They use the language of competitive economy, but while they've been constructing a system which is actually the most unfree market system ever created.
So that's part of your three lies, because of course we are often told that intellectual property rights fosters innovation and people scramble to innovate because of this protection. Those three lies that you talk about in the book.
Yeah, the irony is that they say it's a return to innovative thinking, but most, if you like, patents are the result of publicly funded, publicly subsidized research and development.
The internet.
Well, Google, of course, has thousands and thousands of patents which guarantee it's a monopoly income, but many of the big corporations have been patent hoovers. They've gone around hoovering up the patents, and so that you might make a patent and they buy the patent for £10 million or whatever, and they string patents together and can earn billions of pounds from those patents. Now, that's not a free market system, so it's a lie to say this is a free market system. But it's a double lie, because you and I, as taxpayers, bear the risks, because we are subsidizing much of the research and development, often in public institutions, from which private companies and individuals make all the money. That's why I say, Bill Gates made a pebble of a contribution to get a Gibraltar of income.
And the lie that it's good for growth?
It's good for growth is a complete fiction, because you find, in fact, that the period of rapid patent growth and rapid copyright growth has coincided with slower economic growth. And there is no correlation between the issuing of patents and innovations. In fact, there's a big literature out there saying that patents actually are obstacles to innovations and further research. And it's a respectable argument that's not only on the left, and a number of intelligent people who believe in capitalism of some sort would say exactly what I'm saying. It does not make sense if you believe in a free market system. But once you've got a plutocratic regime where your democracy has been corrupted by these plutocrats and the elites able to use their rental income to pay for campaigns, pay for parties, and have a revolving door as people go from politicians back into being lobbyists and so on, you have a system that's entrapping us.
Professor Guy Standing, thank you.